Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever, the channel where we cover all sorts of different pop culture properties from Masters of the Universe to Mezco. As you can see, this is a figure of John Constantine, or Constantine. It's really a tomato situation, however you pronounce the name. I've always said Constantine, even though maybe it's not technically correct, but who knows. There's some excellent artwork on the front though. Whatever illustrator is responsible for this, it is just absolutely gorgeous. Maybe someone can tell me down in the comments below. On the side, we have some more striking artwork. On the other side, we have a differently styled piece. And over here, we have all of his accessories, or do we? We'll get into that later. And we have some press photos from the original pre-order. We've been waiting quite a while for this guy, but then again, we wait quite a while for pretty much everything that's licensed from Mezco these days. Batman 89, anyone? But anyway, though, let's go ahead and have a look at this guy. But before we do, please make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and you comment down below. All of those things will really help the channel out, and it allows us to grow. And we sure do appreciate all of your support. With that out of the way, let's begin. First of all, we take the slipcover off, and you and I are seeing him for the first time together. There I am, hey. There he is, John Constantine, and you can see him right there looking tough as nails. He's got the sleeves rolled up, all of his accessories proudly on display. On the side, you have Mezco 112 Collective. On the back, there is the Roach himself, Gomez, and on the side, 112. All right, let's get him out of there. And here's everybody's favorite irascible cuss, Hellblazer, Wait a minute, that's not right. Here he is. You know, for me, with Constantine, it started really as a fascination with the character from the old Swamp Thing comics. And just seeing him pop up and being this weird paranormal investigator kind of guy who also kind of had one foot in with the occult and the other kind of on the side of the angels. He was always just such a fascinating guy, and also because he was such a great big jerk. And I think that we all sort of enjoy characters like that, anti-heroes like John, because they sort of represent that darker side of the more heroic nature of some of these universes, and in this case DC, of course. It's so great to have such a premium experience opening this guy up. I stayed off camera for so long just looking through all of the myriad accessories that he comes with, and you know how I do it here on the channel. Whenever we do Mezco, we take our time, we do it right, and we're not going to be rushing through. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, enjoy. First off, let's just talk about what we're working with here. We've got a 6-inch figure clothed in soft goods, which is of course Mezco's specialty with their 112 Collective line. It isn't based on some kind of adapted media necessarily. It is just Mezco's interpretation of comics. He comes with an unimaginable number of accessories. I have him loaded out in kind of my preferred version. For me, it's always fun to start with the head sculpt, and this is one of those magical things that Mezco just really nailed here. This head sculpt is unbelievable. I have seen many illustrations over the years of John Constantine, seen him appear in many comics, and this boils down the essence of so many of those illustrations to just a beautiful, beautiful sculpt. And they nail the personality of the character. They nail his kind of messy hair. It's always sort of everywhere, that unkept look that he seems to maintain, and just all the little details. Truly, this is Mezco flexing its muscles at something that they are really good at, which is bringing that premium experience that you would usually only see in the 12-inch scale to the 6-inch scale. And it truly is a thing of beauty, because when it works, boy does it work. John here is a great example of that. Of course, this is only one of many head sculpts, and as we go through the review and cover different topics about this guy, and this is what I always do with my Mezco reviews for anybody that's seen them before, then you'll know that I'll switch to a new head sculpt for each different topic, and we'll talk about the head sculpt at the top of each one. So the first topic is we're just going to look at the outfit, and of course this is one of the heads, and it's a smirking head. We'll start up here with his dress shirt. Of course, you kind of saw it earlier that you can, of course, take this coat off. It's kind of unremarkable. Of course, John sometimes appears in the comics without the coat, but far more often you're seeing him with the trench coat. It's kind of become his signature superhero outfit, and there's nothing really to write home about the shirt. However, this tie is really cool, and there is a great feature here that I really want you to see. Of course, for Constantine, he usually doesn't have it, the tie actually in place. It's usually very loose around his neck, just like they have it here. This is actually a wire up here, and so you can actually kind of mold this to be what you want it to be in terms of how tight it is fitting to the neck, how kind of bowed out it is. There's so many options here. The only thing that I regret is that there isn't really a wire in the actual tie itself. I think that would have sort of been the next step, but the truth is you can use the wire up here to get the tie in positions like this. So using this, you can pretty much do a lot of what you need to with this. But I still just think this is an incredible feature, and having that wire up there really does make all the difference to where you can almost sculpt this to kind of make it look the way that you want it to look. And so I think it's just terrific. I also like that there wasn't any setup with it. A whole lot of premium companies will have you, tie this yourself and do all kinds of weird stuff. Mezco didn't make you do that. It was already done. The only thing I had to do was put the trench coat on, which was very easy. It did not give me a hard time, and sometimes Mezco trench coats do. Speaking of the trench coat, we better go ahead and talk about that. Mezco has done a lot of trench coats. Usually they just sort of do the same trench coat over and over again. The Jim Gordon trench coat, as I always refer to it as, has been a big staple with Mezco. But this is different. Not only does it look different and the pattern is different, it's sewn a little differently, but there's a few different kinds of things going on here. For one thing, this is more of a denim-like material. It is a little rougher, has a little more of a texture to it, and I think that that does make a difference. It feels more durable. It feels like it can withstand more, and I think it just looks really nice. I like the kind of etching that's from the stitches. It kind of gives it more of a grit, more of a heavy-duty feel to it. I particularly like the collar up here because they have went to great pains to make sure that this collar was scaled appropriately. You can make a collar look stupid in 60 seconds. It can look stupid real quick with a figure that's in the 6-inch scale. Heck, you can do it with a 12-inch scale figure as well. You can make it look awful just by getting the size of this wrong. But here they've got it just right, and there's a wire in there. You can bring it down if you want to, but I like it when John has it up. I think it just looks a lot more gnarly that way. You can also see that the tailoring right around the wrists are right on cue. Sometimes this is way too big on figures in this scale, and it makes it look like they're wearing like their dad's suit or something. But here they've got it just right. There's a posing wire right here in the front of the coat. So you can do all sorts of different little tricks and things with it. If you want it to be windswept, you can kind of pose it back like that. You don't get as much control as I would like. You see, you can do something wild like that and it's going to bounce back up. Probably because they didn't want to put too thick of a wire in there that would have, went a little crazy. So I can understand that. Plus this material feels a little more quality than what they've used in the past. I could be wrong, but it certainly feels that way. And you can tie this up if you want to and make it look like he's in a more formal look, I suppose. But I don't really want to do that. That's not really usually how he appears. Moving on down, you can actually see that the shirt is purposely untucked right here. Of course, this gives him his disheveled appearance, and it is very accurate to the comics. And of course, you have the belt right here, which although it's nothing special, we've seen it a million times before with Mezco releases, it's still nice. The pants are, of course, the least special thing, I guess, about the outfit. They're just black slacks, and why wouldn't they be? That's just what it is. And of course, he's got his just brown dress shoes, and you can see that they just go up a little bit. Nothing too remarkable there, nothing really too special on the bottoms, but I do appreciate that they sculpted this wear under the bottom as if, he's used these things quite a bit. Anyway, though, I think the outfit is very well tailored. I've seen some people online remark that the head sculpt is maybe a little too low, and that makes the coat look a little oversized. And I've seen some people talk about how you can just set it up a little higher. In some ways, that's good, but I almost think that makes the head look a little bulbous when you do that. And I don't think it looks bad at all. I pull it up maybe a little slightly right here. I kind of like between those two looks, but I think proportionally everything factors in really well and looks nice. And aside from that trench coat, there are no costume or soft base goods accessories. The trench coat is what you get, and you just put it on the figure. Before we begin our next category, we'll go ahead and pop this head off, and we'll go with the "Hey, I am beat to a pulp head." This is, I think, a look that we see John have quite a bit in the comics, as he does have a big mouth, and it tends to get him in trouble and beat within an inch of his life. I really love this sculpt. To me, it's a close second to the last one that we looked at. The only reason it's not number one is because, you know, this isn't his usual look, and so it's a little harder to make this more of your main display. I'm particularly impressed by a few different things. One of them is the paint application here that simulates the bruising, and this is just really intense. Like, it really does look like an actual injury. It's actually kind of, you know, a little to look at. Just the cracked smile there, the blood coming down, the bandages, the bright blue eyes. The eye application on this figure is fantastic, by the way. Usually there's little variants sometimes in Mezco, but hey, this one is just superlative. And just the shading, the airbrush work, just next level production quality for a 6-inch scaled figure. And you can't look at this and see it as anything else than just the top of the heap. And you know, if you even look, the hair is styled differently, just like it's been messed up and ruffled, like he's been in this, you know, awful battle. I think the only thing is that for him to have this much damage in his clothes, to be spotless with no grime on them whatsoever, yeah, that's, you know, it's a little funny, I suppose. All right, on to the next category, which will be our articulation. Of course, with Mezco, you usually have a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with, but of course, we've seen Mezco kind of transitioning and phasing out some of their old, unremarkable articulation that they used to have. It was okay for its time, but of course the industry is moving in more of that hyper-articulated direction, and Mezco is doing their best to keep up. In order to show this, I will tell you that most of this articulation, the range is much better without the trench coat on. But I know that 90% of people like me are going to be pretty much exclusively displaying and posing this guy with the trench coat. So I'm just going to show it with a trench coat. I think that's the more interesting thing anyway, because I think everybody already knows without any of the clothes on how the Mezcos have great range. With the trench coat on, this is what you're getting in terms of up with the arm where you feel comfortable. And I think that that is great. That is 90 degrees. I think it looks nice. All right, now moving down, this is always the kind of iffy part. If you don't do anything else, you're not really going to get this arm up very much. This is me struggling against the coat. Instead, you're going to have to employ some tricks. So one of those is, as I always talk about, twisting the fabric kind of slowly as the arm goes up, and you can get better range. It's just a matter of patience and twisting that fabric around the coat again and again and again. And so if you're willing, you can get some nice stuff. But keep in mind, you're twisting not only this, but you're twisting the shirt under it. So you're trying to kind of struggle against them both. It's pretty tight, I'll just say that. Of course, you do get actually a double joint right here. I think people might have been concerned about that initially, but indeed this is a double jointed elbow. Even with the trench coat on, you can see that it does go up the arm a little, but he can touch his own nose, especially with the aid of the wrist, which of course is just a rotation and a hinge right there. Now, he does have a swivel at the bicep, and like I said, it is a matter of twisting that coat around it. You can do pretty much the whole way around if you're willing to twist the coat and be patient. The head itself has all sorts of great range. Now, I'm glad that Mezco has moved away from just having solid neck head sculpts like they used to, because, you know, it makes it a lot more modular and easy to switch things out, because you've got all of this range on the inside with the ball joint and the neck joint, and then you can add the head, and it just gives a whole lot more in terms of options, in terms of being able to cock the head. And there really isn't much of a break either, because the chin kind of hides any break in articulation. Looking way down, looking way up, this is really just a fantastic amount of range. Nothing is really inhibiting it. The chest here has all sorts of great range. I don't want to do too much because, you know, it'll kind of untuck the shirt all the rest of the way. But you can see that you can tilt it back and forth. He can go forward quite a bit. He can go back a really crazy amount. So I think that it works really well. Of course, he does have a waist swivel right there. It's going to be limited a little though, because you don't want to swivel his waist around so much that you're like pulling the shirt out. Down here at the legs, you can see that he's able to kick way up, and these slacks are so loose that it's not going to inhibit the articulation at all. He could not be wearing the soft goods and have the exact same range on his leg going up. So you get a really nice over 90-degree angle. And he can even do like complete splits because the pants are so simultaneously well tailored, but they're loose fitting enough not to get in the way. There is a great thigh swivel right there, and that isn't inhibited at all. And he does have excellent double jointed knees, as Mezcos are wont to do. I think the biggest problem is an old problem that plagues Mezco and has for a lot of years now, and that's down here at his ankles. There's not a tremendous amount of range down here at the shoes. I think there's pretty good side-to-side range, but the problem for me is there's not much back and forth range, which means that he's a little more prone to tipping over than I would like him to be. It's not a gigantic problem, but that was me trying to, get him into a pose live right there. Honestly, articulation, not a problem. Like I said, the only area that I just feel like that they weren't there on are those ankles. So if that bothers you, that might be something you want to modify somehow, but for me, they work well enough. They're just not quite up to standard with other companies. And it's something Mezco needs to improve on, especially at the price point for these guys. All right, time for another category. This time we're going to pop off the head, and we're going to look at the vanilla head. When I say vanilla, I just mean really pretty much expressionless. I suppose he's more determined than anything here. It's a fine head sculpt, really. I think that it does the job. That's definitely John Constantine, however you want to say it. I love the piercing blue eyes. I think the hair looks really great. I love that there's these tiny little points in the hair. So that is something they should be proud of. I really do like the subtle spray for the 5 o'clock shadow down there. That's something that you can easily mess up, and they didn't. I love just how the profile of the face looks. And so it's instantly recognizable as the character. I think it's a great achievement. Do I like him smirking more? Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot more. But this is still great because, even Constantine gets freaked out sometimes, right? Then you know it's really bad. Next category we will look at is the big one, and that's accessories, as you might imagine. It's going to be an undertaking talking about these, so let's just get right into it. Let John hang out back here for a minute. Matter of fact, let's put him to the test. Let's see, can he cross his leg and set? Oh yeah, that's a lovely look right there. Yeah, it's very natural, actually. So let's go ahead and look at some of these accessories. One of them is this lovely, lovely lighter here. And it's the kind of thing you take for granted, but man, this is intricate, and it's hard for my camera to even pick this up, and I'm going to do my best to focus in. That's as good as I can get right there. And you can see this unbelievable amount of detailing, almost as if the lighter itself were something arcane or something really old that he has around. The translucence of the flame is very nice, and it's just a lovely piece. This is one of Mezco's signatures, to be able to create these super detailed accessories at such a small scale, relatively. And so that my fingers aren't in the way, on some little tweezers is a closed version of the lighter where you can actually see the design all etched in there. It is truly a thing of beauty. They really must be commended at Mezco for this incredible job. Even on the side, there's all sorts of cool little details. And the little notch where you can open the lighter, it's just the stuff that dreams are made of when it comes to 6-inch action figures. And what would a paranormal investigator slash exorcist slash adventurer, Justice League Dark member, whatever you want to say, what would he be without a giant crucifix? That's right, you gotta have something to ward off those demons. And here it is in full ornate detail. This could have been so simple, but just seeing the little, I don't know, skulls maybe? Some of the little wings and things emblazoned on the edges. This is Dracula would be having nightmares if he saw this thing. I mean, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And of course the other side has similar details as well. So this is just as nice as it gets. He has a wonderfully detailed knife right here. Definitely looks kind of ornamental, sort of arcane in nature. This is just so cool looking. You can almost see some kind of evil face on the front, detailing, of course, at the bottom of the handle. It's double bladed with a tiny little inscription in those blades, and the other side has those details repeated. This is lovely. What an incredible little knife or dagger. Ashley Williams, eat your heart out. Here we go. We have indeed a chainsaw. So when Hellblazer really has to, you know, get to work on some demons, you can take this thing and dismember them. Is this the same chainsaw that Ash came with? I don't know, but it looks sort of similar. All right, so we're breaking out the big boys now. This is his giant ornamental sword here. Definitely looks like a relic of time gone by. This looks like maybe the phases of the moon, perhaps, right here on the front. All sorts of weathering on the blade, scratches, indentions, and these spikes. And at the bottom, you can even see a little ribbon coming off of there with a gold handle. On the other side, same kinds of details. Everything is just wonderful looking, and I can't wait to do some photography with him wielding this giant thing. It's so cool. And when all else fails, why not a double barrel shotgun? That's something I love about the Hellblazer character, is that always when the going gets tough, he's not some kind of righteous crusader. He's just going to use whatever is at his disposal to survive if he has to. He doesn't have some kind of, you know, rule. He's just going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so this is just incredible. I love not only are the little details that Mezco is known for when it comes to guns just emblazoned all over this thing, but you even have things like this. I mean, how cool is this? I mean, that's amazing. So, you know, he's it's just incredible. Even this, you can actually get the sights flipped out right here, and you can actually use them. Not only that, but there's even little gold accents throughout, so it gives it that little extra something. So I'm very impressed with this. Very nice. Of course, John is a wielder of all kinds of different arcane magics, and here you can see that he's going to have a huge assortment of things like pentagrams and things like that we've come to expect. Of course, it's translucent. It has just a great ethereal kind of look to it, and most of these you're just going to be able to position over his hands that are open and are meant to go around this, and we'll be looking at that later. Here we have another variation of energy projection right here with a star. He has smaller discs of energy as well, both in the orange variety, the smaller orange variety, the larger blue variety, and the smaller blue variety. So truly, you can have him wield all sorts of different magics. Of course, of the Hellblazer's many talents, wielding and manipulating fire is definitely one of them. And yet another flame if you want him to dual wield. Of course, he comes with a huge assortment of hands. I'm going to show you my favorites here. This is hands that are wielding tarot cards, and just the amount of ornate detail that we have on these are just unbelievable. You can actually see the individual cards. I have no idea what any of this means, but who knows? I guess I'm assuming death cards are in there and things. But these are unbelievable in terms of the detail that's actually on these, and the fact that they're attached in between the fingers. This is incredible. Some of my favorite alternative hands I have ever seen Mezco do, and of course the other one is back there in his hands. And of course a version left and right exists on this one as well, and he also had this one earlier. This is just the hand to hold the lighter, and that's what he had at the beginning of the review. And it holds the lighter quite nicely. Of course, here is one of his open hands, of which he comes with two. He has a left and a right fisted hand, if that's your jam. He's got a regular old gripping hand for his right, so that you can hold things like the sword and the dagger. He comes with two magic wielding hands. Here's yet another magic wielding hand that's a little more open. He has left and right like gripping hands. And finally, he has open palmed hands for both sides. So indeed, there is one set of accessories that's been highly controversial since the very beginning, but not from the fans, who definitely aren't offended by this sort of thing, but because of Warner Brothers and DC Comics. Recently, especially evident in the McFarlane figure space, you've not been able to have any kind of tobacco product representation or gun representation. Thankfully, even though at first it started to look like, because I think they had removed the pictures on the side of him smoking and also some of the pictures of him using his gun. People thought that they were going to cut these accessories from the figure. Mezco did kind of unofficially give a wink wink and a nudge nudge to the people worried about that, and they were like, hey, don't worry about it, you'll see. And sure enough, here it is as promised. He's got his cigarette. You get 3 of these with little transparent smoke. You also get 3 of these transparent smoke plume effects with a little tip at the end where you can plug it in. And here it is, a bag of cigarette contraband. Thanks, DC, for making it feel so very dirty to include this. Of course, I don't smoke. I don't have any kind of agenda or anything like that. I understand what DC and Warner Brothers are trying to do. At the same time, this figure is very clearly labeled for 18 and up. This is an adult collectible, guys. I could understand if it was being at Walmart, marketed to children. This isn't being, they don't care about this dude in a trench coat. They care about Batman and Superman, all right, guys? So cool it. Now, with all that being said, I will say that there just had to be some kind of way to actually get those cigarettes in John's mouth, and sure enough, there is. So it's not readily apparent, and I definitely feel like that I should give a little more attention to this. And you can see here, I've clearly got the cigarette in the mouth. So basically, all you've got to do is pop the head off, pull the chin down, and so you see this? It turns out there's a gap between the lips and the teeth and all of that. You just have to pull it down. It kind of has a hilarious effect, right? Once you pull it down a little, pull down that chin and get a good enough gap to where you can put it in there without harming the teeth or the lips on the way as you place it, and voila. You can adjust as needed. I can kind of go, left or right a little, and it's a great option to have. But I also wanted to make sure that you could see some of the other cigarette options that it does come with. Of course, this is the one where there's the most smoke. Of course, here we have another option where you can put this in on the beat up head right here. We have another option. He actually, in that tiny little bag, came with some cigarettes to where they've been smoked right to the ash. And you can see that the ash is beginning to fall off on the edge right there. So that's when the cigarette is pretty much done for. And then finally, it's like he's blowing smoke circles or like plumes right here. And it's kind of funny because this face doesn't really lend itself to looking like he's smoking anything or even exhaling any kind of smoke. But I just definitely wanted you to see some of those options. Actually, my favorite of those options is probably this with the kind of medium amount of smoke coming out of it. Just like I had shown earlier, all we really got to do is just pull that chin down to get the opening. You simply want to find where the cigarette is flat right here and insert it. Remember, by making sure it's on like the flat part, you can kind of put it in without damaging the teeth or the lips. That's one thing maybe I'm slightly concerned about, is I just wonder if having these in for any given amount of time might eventually indent the sculpt and the teeth or the lips. But I think this is probably my preferred version right here. I just like to where the smoke isn't too outrageous necessarily, and I think I'm going to be going with that one. But I definitely wanted to include a little more explanation because it turned out, yes, there was a way. Now, interestingly, there aren't necessarily hands that are meant to hold these specifically, and you would almost hope there would be. But since there's no specific hand meant to clasp the cigarette, I suppose you just have to kind of put it between fingers in the open palm. And here he is taking a break from a long day of magic and fighting demons. According to John Constantine, 9 out of 10 doctors agree. Smoking's bad. Don't do it. Even the most skilled exorcist sometimes needs a little backup. So you can see he can hold the gun very well. Brings me to the final accessories, which is, of course, the posing arm. This is really a fantastic stand because it utilizes that excellent artwork from the front of the box. Keep in mind, just like with all Mezco releases, it does come with a foot peg replacement. And just as I'm demonstrating here, in conjunction with that posing arm, you can get some pretty epic stuff, I have to say. Time for another head sculpt change. This is the final head sculpt, and it's just him beat up and not smirking. So it's practically the same as the one before. But as you can see, he's not smiling. Things have gotten a little more dire. But it's great to get, a standard standard regular head, a smiling regular head, standard beat up head, and a smiling beat up head. So it kind of covers all your bases with those 4 heads. So I think that the last thing is how to apply some of these effects. The discs just fit over his wrists, the small ones do, and the large ones fit over his forearms. Now, according to the directions, that's actually supposed to be like when he's not wearing the trench coat. But you can easily, as I'm showing here, just fit it right over his arms by kind of taking the trench coat sleeves up a little bit. So you don't have to take the trench coat off to use that if you don't want to. For the larger energy projections, I definitely had to consult the instructions to make sure I was doing it right, because it turns out the connection points are so cleverly hidden right there in like the little smoke plume that's behind it. So I actually thought that was really cool for both. So for this last category, I'm just going to return him to his smirking head because it's the one I like the best. And I do want to show you some comparisons with a few other figures. Most importantly, the Constantine figure that was always kind of my go-to for all these years. This was for the DC subscription service that Mattel was doing, and it was the joke figure I had at the beginning, and it was this Constantine. Of course, he is using their traditional kind of trench coat suit body that they used, overused for so many years. And of course, I think that this was the Four Horsemen's work. And I think it's really good. And I've used it for years and years in conjunction with my Swamp Thing display. I think now maybe I look at it and he seems a little tall and bean Polish, but I know that that has a lot to do with some of the limitations for the reuse on the trench coat. And the head sculpt is a little, it's definitely a little old, reminding me a little more of Rorschach from Watchmen. And yeah, I think that this has more of the exuberance for what we would expect from Constantine. I think what I'm trying to say is this is just so dour, and this has a lot more personality. Of course, one comparison I've been looking forward to making is very much his companion figure, in my opinion, which was Dr. Fate. I think they look fantastic together. And of course, for a while there, it looked like that Mezco was assembling a Justice League Dark of sorts. I certainly hope that that's still the plan going forward, because they look really nice together, and I would love to have more members. And listen, say what you will about Black Adam, a movie I really liked, but Pierce Brosnan, he was wonderful as Dr. Fate. Of course, John is no stranger to Batman, character he works with all the time. If you're curious why his bodysuit is a little dark, it's because I dyed it that way and did an instructional video right here on the channel to show you how. So if you're interested, check it out. And these guys just look fantastic together. I love it, seeing them both in this Mezco style. It's just like they're meant to be. Of course, probably my favorite Mezco original character is Doc Nocturnal. It's great to see these two occult superheroes side by side, because it does make a modicum of sense that they would be working together. But we won't stop there with our fun. Of course, we've got Mr. Atticus Doom, who is yet another Mezco occult superhero. And it's so cool to have kind of this paranormal detective superhero team up happening that's with Mezco. You can certainly tell what sorts of characters that Mez really leans towards, huh? I mean, I'm not complaining, I'm buying them. Interestingly, Constantine did not come with any sort of alcohol. And the character is very, very drunk a lot. So I will take Picard's bottle of wine from the old Diamond Select Toys days, and it's comically huge because it was meant for a 7-inch figure, and I used to have this posed with the old Hellblazer figure from Mattel, but now you can have him get into the liquor cabinets of all liquor cabinets, and there he is. What's the vintage on this thing? Looks ridiculous. So, final thoughts on John Constantine. This is an epic figure. We're looking at pretty much the quality of a 6-scale 12-inch figure downsized into a 6-inch figure. And that is always just incredible. I feel like in production, he's turned out really, really well. be able to take a character like this, who's pretty much just an occult investigator in a trench coat, and make him just visually so interesting requires a different level of effort than it takes to make a guy in a bat costume interesting, because he sort of already is. Instead, there's a lot of ways you can mess this up and make this entirely generic. Instead, they're sure to avoid that trap by just putting so much effort into the personality in the head sculpt, the incredible accessories, and the real attention to detail in the tailoring that makes this figure stand out amongst the pack. This is definitely the best John Constantine figure that has ever been made, and I do not see it being surpassed anytime soon. Of course, here's hoping that Mezco answers the call and continues to build out that Justice League Dark lineup. I would love to see their takes on many of the other characters. I definitely appreciate anybody who stuck around till the end of this review. Usually my Mezco videos are some of the least popular that I upload here on the channel. It's kind of funny, but I still keep doing them. I guess I just love the Mezco products that much, and I'll just continue to do them. Of course, be sure to comment down below and let me know what you think about John here, and tell me what your thoughts on the Hellblazer are. And of course, as always, God bless you and yours, especially John Constantine, because he needs it. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Take care. Fanboy out.